Hi, it's Mike from Poison Control here with a special buzz on bites and stings. You may have seen all the media coverage recently on the invasive Asian needle ants. They have a potentially deadly sting and are spreading across the United States, with the largest concentration in the southeastern part of the country. So, how did they get here? How dangerous are they? And what do you need to do to stay safe? Here's the buzz on the bites and stings of the Asian needle ant. I'm joined by Andrea Lucky, who is an evolutionary biologist, a biodiversity scientist, and an associate professor with the University of Florida. Andrea, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for inviting me to join you.
Well, the Asian needle ant, it just popped up in the media, and while I did some research, and for nearly 100 years, it has been in the United States, but I don't think a lot of people are familiar with this species of ant. Can you tell us about it?
Absolutely. Yeah, so this ant's been in the media a lot this summer. And one of the reasons that people are paying attention to it now is because its population actually has expanded quite a lot this past 100 years. Whereas before it might have gone unnoticed because it lives in places we might not expect an invasive ant to be, like closed, mature hardwood forests, rather than in urban areas or in disturbed areas. That's one of the reasons that people are starting to notice it now. I will say that it's not super common yet in Florida. In fact, the population boom, if you want to call it that, has really been happening, a lot of expansion in Georgia and moving sort of westward from the eastern seaboard of the United States. But now it looks like it's making its way south slowly across the Georgia border and coming into Florida. And I think people should be prepared that it's eventually going to make its way around here. It's likely that we're going to see it, and because it stings, people should be aware of the potential for strong reactions to that sting, just like with some other ants that sting.
And our climate is very conducive for lots of invasive species.
Oh, that's right. I mean, just like we love to come to Florida because it's very hospitable to us, there are a lot of ants, and not just ants, insects, animals in general, plants too, that find it very comfortable to live here. And one of the things that we do know is that there are a huge number of ant species that have been accidentally introduced to the United States and specifically to Florida over the years and have become established here and have essentially become part of our ecosystem. And we have learned to live with a lot of them. I mean, fire ants, you talk to many people in Florida, they may not even know that red imported fire ants are non-native to Florida because everyone's used to having them around, and you watch where you sit if you're sitting on the ground.
Yeah, it's very important. We'll get to the stings in a second, but in looking through the research to learn about this, one of the things that I came up with is roughly translated the scientific name for this is short-wicked ant from China, and I think that really goes to show this is a species that's really from the Far East.
That's right. This comes from Asia. This ant's not just found in China. It's found in Japan, China, a number of other Asian countries. That's the native range for this species. And as you mentioned, the translation of short-wicked ant, this ant does have a sting, and people who get stung by it notice that. It's remembered for it. And like a lot of non-native species, it comes from Asia in part because we do a lot of trade with Asia. And so this ant was most likely introduced, if not on, potted plants, but on some sort of materials where accidentally and unknowingly these ants hitched a ride.
And they are venomous, so they can cause severe allergic reactions, and in some cases, that actually could include death.
Yes, just like any, well, let's talk insects for a second, right? So the insects we're talking about, ants, are closely related to bees and wasps. So just like somebody might have a strong reaction to a bee sting or a wasp sting, ant stings also have venom in them. Now, not all ants sting, but the ones that do, every ant that has venom has its own what we'd call a venom profile. The chemistry is different for each species. And so whereas one ant might sting you and it might hurt for just a little bit, other ants could have what we might call a more potent sting. And these ants do have a strong sting. It can hurt for, an hour or 2 hours, or for some people, it could hurt for a couple of days. But for people who have an especially strong reaction, that anaphylactic reaction to other types of stings, that's where people really worry about, a very adverse reaction or potentially even death. It's that personal reaction to the sting. I do want to point out that's not very common, but for people who have that susceptibility, this is when people want to start carrying an EpiPen, just like they might be worried about getting stung by a honeybee or a yellow jacket. These ants could become a problem.
Yeah, and I should point out if somebody has difficulty breathing, swelling of the face or throat, dizziness, rapid heartbeat, it's very important that you call the Poison Helpline 1-800-222-1222 if you do have those symptoms. But obviously for any bites or stings, the Poison Helpline 1-800-222-1222 is there to help you. So as we look at Florida, and again, the reports in different parts of the states have popped up, but not necessarily. We don't know the long-term impact of these right now. But where in Florida would people potentially come across these?
So right now, the one confirmed record we have in Florida is just south of the Georgia border. So we're looking at really far north, but with most invasive species, what we tend to see happening is things get moved around along routes, basically transportation routes, and where there's a higher concentration of people moving stuff, we tend to see invasive species arriving first. So if we were to try to predict where might we see them sooner rather than later, I would say urban areas in North Florida might start to see them. And when I say urban, one of the things that's interesting about these ants is they don't necessarily love being in urban areas. They really do like moist, closed canopy, mature hardwood forests. That's something we've seen. But because it's Florida, our city parks could have really mature trees. We could have some dead wood on the ground. Even people's backyards have a lot of this kind of habitat. But I do think that when people are starting to think about, am I going to encounter these ants? We might see North Florida documenting records of them sooner than other parts of the state.
And so what I was reading, actually mulch and flower beds would be the kind of habitat where you could see these ants.
That's true, mulch, but I would say actually downed wood. So logs on the ground is probably a really great habitat where people might encounter them. And part of the reason for that is that when you have a nice big colony of these ants, one of the things they need nearby is a lot of food. And these ants certainly do well when there are termites around. And as you know, the place you find termites is when you have dead wood. So if you want to think about one way of anticipating where would these ants be, you can try to think about where are they going to have enough of a food source that they could really grow. Well, one of the things that's interesting about these ants and what they're actually doing out there is they're not just sitting around waiting to jump on people. In fact, they're not very aggressive at all. The stings that might happen are going to be from accidental encounters. If you happen to be doing some yard work and you stick your hand somewhere, you might essentially startle them and get a sting. This is very different from our red imported fire ants, where you happen to bump into a nest and they all come boiling out. These ants are sort of the opposite. They're pretty mellow until they get very disturbed. But what they're doing is they're, of course, trying to grow their populations. They're producing eggs, and then they have to feed those larvae. And termites are a great food source, but all the other leaf litter organisms, so the other ants, the beetles, whatever else is living in that soil layer that is just has a little bit of leaf litter on top, all that down wood, spiders, all those critters, those are becoming food sources for these ants. And whereas people might say, okay, that's fine, take them, we have to remember that it's the frogs and the lizards and the birds and all the other animals that are feeding on that level of the food chain. So if this new species of ant comes in and they are voracious predators, they really do a great job of kind of clearing house. That could be a real problem for other animals in the food chain who are depending on those insects and other arthropods for their food.
Last question though. One of the things difficult with this ant is it looks like a lot of other ants. So it's actually, especially for non-scientific people, it will be a little bit difficult to pick out.
Yeah, it is. And if people find it hard to identify these ants, don't feel bad. The experts have a hard time too. This has been one of those ants that's tough. It's dark. And so that's one of the ways you can tell that it's different from a lot of the ants we usually see around here. It's dark, it's pretty uniform in color, whereas fire ants are kind of reddish and have sort of a red and black look to them. These ants are going to be a little bit more long, cylindrical, bit smoother. but most people aren't looking that close. So the characteristics I think that are a little bit more useful rather than describing the ant itself is if you look at a whole group of them. So for example, let's say you roll over a log in your yard. As I mentioned before, the behavior of fire ants, they all come boiling out. Well, these ants, rather than sort of doing that boiling and sort of aggressive looking for what was attacking them, these ants will sort of be running around to hide, to get away. And so you'll see a lot of little black ants, and they'll be moving quickly and trying to essentially get out of the way, but they will not be they won't be doing this sort of zigzaggy. They sort of have a little bit more directed motion. So when we talk to pest control folks who are doing different ant IDs, they will take some of these ants and put them under the microscope eventually, but they have to be able to spot them in the field. And so the habitat you're in makes a difference. So if you're in a shady place, if you're in a moist place, somewhere with really nice either leaf litter or wood, and you see a lot of black ants together, this is potentially one of those species that you might be encountering.
Andrea Lucky from the University of Florida, thank you very much. We're talking Asian needle ants today. The population of this invasive species growing in the United States, I believe 20 states now. We have confirmed sightings of these ants, most of them in the southeastern United States. While not necessarily an aggressive ant, the sting, though, can be dangerous. Anaphylactic shock is a concern. A reminder to everybody to save the poison helpline in your phone, 1-800-222-1222. Certified poison specialists are standing by. These are medical professionals. They can help you with all bites and stings. Even those that may not be life-threatening but are just a little bit painful, please call 1-800-222-1222 for fast, free, and confidential care. Andrea Lucky, again, thank you very much for joining us. I am Mike from Poison Control. Have a good day.